Imagine spending weeks, sometimes months, inside a giant steel tube with no windows, no sunlight, and no way to step outside for fresh air. That's life on a U.S. Navy nuclear submarine, one of the most extreme environments where human beings live and work. To most people, the thought of being sealed off from the outside world under hundreds of feet of water sounds like a nightmare. For the sailors who take on this mission, though, it becomes routine part of their duty, their pride, and their identity. Serving aboard a submarine isn't just another Navy job. It's a lifestyle that demands sacrifices most of us can barely imagine. Every sailor who joins the crew gives up personal space, family time, and nearly all contact with the outside world. The air they breathe is recycled, the water they drink is purified from the ocean around them, and the artificial lighting becomes their sunrise and sunset. Time blurs together when you live under the sea, and days are measured not by the sun, but by the watch schedules that divide every sailor's responsibilities. But no one is simply thrown into this environment without preparation. Before stepping aboard, every future submariner must go through one of the toughest training pipelines in the military. This isn't just about memorizing emergency procedures or learning how to operate machinery. It's about reshaping how a person thinks, reacts, and handles stress. The training is designed to push recruits past what they believe they can endure, forcing them to discover new reserves of discipline, endurance, and teamwork. This journey from fresh recruit to fully qualified submariner is as fascinating as it is grueling. It's a story of transformation, of how ordinary people are forged into sailors capable of working in one of the most dangerous and unforgiving places on Earth. And that's exactly what we're about to explore: the hidden world of submarine training, the hardships recruits face, and the resilience it takes to survive beneath the waves. Before anyone is trusted to set foot on a submarine, they have to prove they can handle the pressure literally and figuratively. The Navy doesn't just hand you a uniform and say, "Good luck down there." Instead, it runs you through a gauntlet of training programs designed to filter out anyone who isn't fully prepared. It's not just about book smarts or physical toughness. It's about mental grit, teamwork, and the ability to stay calm when things go sideways. The first stage is what everyone knows: boot camp. This is where recruits learn the basics of Navy life discipline: marching, following orders, and understanding that they're now part of something much larger than themselves. But while regular sailors might move on to assignments on ships or bases, those who volunteer or are selected for submarines head down a very different path. Their journey continues at a place known as Sub School, officially called the Naval Submarine School in Groton, Connecticut. Sub School is like a crash course in how to survive and thrive in an environment that's completely unnatural for human beings. Here, recruits don't just learn about the parts of a submarine they live and breathe the culture of life underwater. They study everything from basic seamanship to advanced engineering. They're drilled on navigation, communication, and how the nuclear reactors that power the boat work. It's intense, and it has to be, because once the hatch closes, there's no backup. On the surface, you might be able to call for help, but hundreds of feet under the ocean, the crew is on its own. A huge part of the training focuses on emergencies. Recruits are thrown into simulations where everything goes wrong. Fires break out, compartments flood, or the power fails. Instructors crank up the stress on purpose, shouting, blaring alarms, and sometimes even cutting the lights to mimic the panic of real disasters. The goal is to make sure that when something truly does go wrong, the sailors react with muscle memory instead of fear. They have to learn how to think clearly in chaos, to trust their training when every instinct might be screaming at them to panic. And then there's the physical side. Recruits have to qualify in areas that test not only their strength, but also their ability to endure discomfort. The pressure chamber tests their reactions to different depths, while escape training drills them on how to get out of a submarine safely in case of a catastrophic failure. Imagine being sealed in a tall, water-filled tank and told to rise to the surface, using only your lungs and technique, while instructors watch closely for any mistake. It's as much about mastering fear as it is about learning the procedure. Perhaps the most important lesson, though, isn't written in any manual. It's the realization that no one succeeds on a submarine alone. Every task, every shift, every emergency response requires absolute trust in the crew. The recruit standing next to you might be the one who saves your life or the one who relies on you to save theirs. That bond, built under pressure and training, becomes the foundation for everything that follows once they head out to sea. Stepping onto a submarine for the first time is like walking into another world. From the moment a sailor ducks through the hatch, they leave behind the open sky, the sunlight, the simple comfort of fresh air. Inside, the boat feels more like a machine than a home. Narrow steel passageways, pipes running overhead, ladders instead of staircases, and every square inch designed with a purpose. Space is so limited that nothing goes to waste, and sailors quickly learn that privacy is more of an idea than a reality. The crew lives on what's known as hot racking. This means there aren't enough bunks for everyone, so sailors share them in shifts. One person might be asleep while another is on duty, and when the shift changes, they trade places. A single mattress might see 3 different sailors in a single day. Sheets are changed often, but the practice is a reminder of just how little room there is when you're living inside a steel tube beneath the ocean. Claustrophobia isn't just a possibility, it's a daily challenge. For some, it fades with time. For others, it lingers like an itch they can never quite scratch. The rhythm of life on board doesn't follow the sun, because there is no sun. Instead, the submarine runs on an artificial schedule, divided into watches. A sailor might work 6 hours, rest for 12, then work again, cycling endlessly until the patrol is over. Days blur together without windows or natural light. The only way to mark time is by meals, by the sound of announcements over the intercom, and by the shifting duties of each watch. Some sailors say they stop thinking of days altogether and simply focus on rotations. Work, eat, sleep, repeat. Food becomes an anchor for morale. The galley is small, but it's the beating heart of the submarine. Cooks work around the clock, serving meals that range from surprisingly good comfort food to whatever can be made with preserved ingredients after weeks at sea. In the first couple of weeks, there might be fresh fruit, vegetables, and milk. After that, meals rely heavily on canned, frozen, and powdered supplies. A good cook can make all the difference, turning powdered eggs and shelf-stable milk into something that feels like a taste of home. When you're hundreds of feet underwater, a slice of pizza on Friday night or a warm dessert can feel like a luxury. Work itself is relentless. Submariners don't have the option of coasting through their shifts because every job is critical. The sonar operator listens for sounds that might signal another ship or a potential threat. The reactor team monitors the nuclear core, ensuring that the heartbeat of the submarine never falters. Navigators plot courses with precision, knowing that a mistake could mean colliding with underwater terrain or drifting into hostile waters. Even the junior crew members, often assigned the less glamorous jobs like cleaning and maintenance, to know their contributions. Keep the boat running. A clogged filter or an overlooked valve can escalate into a serious problem in an environment where failure isn't tolerated. Despite the tension, camaraderie grows strong. Jokes are traded during quiet moments, stories are shared over meals, and traditions unique to the submarine community bond the crew together. New sailors nicknamed nubs are tested by veterans in playful ways, challenged to prove they belong. It's all part of building trust, because out at sea, trust is everything. If someone makes a mistake, it's not just their problem, it's everyone's. There are moments of calm, too. Sometimes the captain allows the crew to line up at the periscope one by one, giving them a brief chance to glimpse the world outside. A sailor might see the endless expanse of the ocean, a faraway ship, or even a pod of dolphins racing the waves. That fleeting glimpse of light and movement becomes a reminder of why they're there to protect that vast ocean, to keep it open and free, and to ensure that no one threatens their homeland from beneath the waves. And yet, even in those rare moments of quiet, the awareness never fades. This is not a normal life. A submarine is a paradox. It's a weapon, a home, a workplace, and a cage all at once. For weeks, sometimes months, the crew lives in silence and secrecy, their sacrifices invisible to the outside world. Families wait without updates. Friends go months without hearing a word. And the sailors themselves live in a bubble where the outside world seems to pause until they surface again. It is this life monotonous, claustrophobic, yet profoundly purposeful that forges submariners into a breed of sailor unlike any other. By the time they've endured the long watches, the sleepless nights, and the cramped routines, they understand not only the mission, but also each other. They may be trapped together in a steel tube, but that confinement transforms into unity. They don't just work side by side, they carry each other through the silent darkness of the deep. Life aboard a nuclear submarine has a rhythm, but it's not the kind of rhythm you'd ever describe as comfortable. By the time a crew has settled into their mission, the early adrenaline of deployment has worn off. The sailors are no longer wide-eyed about being hundreds of feet beneath the waves. Instead, they're neck-deep in the grind, where the real test begins not of skill, but of endurance. This is the point when the pressure of the submarine's world starts to weigh down the hardest. It isn't one big dramatic moment, it's the relentless buildup of little ones. Imagine living in a hallway that doubles as your bedroom, a galley that's smaller than most people's kitchens back home, and showers where you're constantly reminded to hurry because hot water is rationed. Every meal is eaten with the same 50 faces. Every conversation feels like deja vu, and there's literally nowhere to go if you need space. Sleep, or the lack of it, becomes the biggest enemy. Sailors live on an 18-hour day, broken into 3 6-hour blocks, 6 hours on duty, 6 hours for training or maintenance, and 6 hours for sleep. That means your day is constantly shifting against the clock back home. One week, your watch might start at 2 a.m. The next, you might find yourself climbing into bed at 10 in the morning. After weeks of this, your body loses its sense of natural time. There's no sunrise to reset you, no night sky to wind you down, just fluorescent bulbs, red lights, and the constant hum of machinery. That constant hum itself becomes a kind of mental weight. There's the thrum of the nuclear reactor, the groan of pipes shifting under pressure, and the metallic vibration of the hull as it cuts through the water. At first, these sounds are background noise, but after weeks at sea, they become part of your reality, like living inside the body of a giant machine. Some sailors describe it as being in a womb of steel. Others say it's like living inside a never-ending headache. And then there's the isolation. Submariners can't pick up a phone and call home whenever they want. Internet doesn't exist down here. Communication with family is reduced to rare, heavily filtered emails, sometimes weeks apart. For many, the hardest part isn't missing out on big events. It's missing the little ones. Birthdays, anniversaries, a child's first steps all pass by without them. There's a certain loneliness that creeps in when you realize that life on the surface keeps moving, while yours feels suspended beneath the waves. The climax of submarine life isn't some Hollywood-style explosion or dramatic emergency. It's the breaking point of the human spirit, the place where fatigue, confinement, and monotony combine into a kind of psychological storm. For some sailors, this is the point where they dig deep and find resilience they didn't know they had. For others, it's where cracks start to show, short tempers flare, patience thins, and even small disagreements can feel like the end of the world. But here's the thing. This is also where the submarine community shows its strength. In the middle of all this pressure, sailors lean on each other. They become more than coworkers. They become a strange kind of family. Nobody can survive the stress of this life alone, and every submariner knows that the person sleeping in the rack above them or standing watch at their side is carrying the same burden. In the darkest stretches of deployment, that bond is what keeps the crew moving forward, even when the walls feel like they're closing in. That is the heart of the climax, the moment where it's no longer about machinery or tactics, but about the human beings who make this life possible. It's where they prove, not just to their commanding officers, but to themselves, that they can endure what most people wouldn't even dare to imagine. When a submarine finally completes its patrol or mission, there's a strange moment of transition. After weeks, sometimes months, beneath the waves, the crew begins preparing to surface. The first hints of this change aren't dramatic. Maybe it's the subtle shift in routine or the sudden urgency in cleaning every corner of the boat. Sailors know the end is near, and even though they've been running on fumes, that last stretch brings a new burst of energy. The most striking moment comes when the hatch is opened and fresh air rushes in. For many submariners, that first breath is unforgettable. It isn't just oxygen, it's sunlight in your lungs, freedom you can taste. Some say they don't realize how heavy the recycled air had become until they breathe in the ocean breeze again. Others say it's like waking up from a long, strange dream. Stepping off the submarine is a shock of its own. The brightness of daylight is overwhelming after months of artificial bulbs. Colors seem sharper, louder. Grass looks impossibly green. The vastness of the open world is almost dizzying compared to the endless steel corridors they've been living in. Families wait on the pier, waving flags, holding signs, and straining to catch a glimpse of their loved ones as the crew disembarks. For the sailors, that reunion is the moment when all the sacrifice makes sense. The missed birthdays, the sleepless watches, the stress of confinement. One hug can erase months of isolation. But even in those joyful moments, submariners carry with them something that people on the surface can't quite understand. They've lived in a world most will never see, facing challenges that test every fiber of their being. They've proven to themselves that they can endure monotony, isolation, and exhaustion without breaking. More than that, they've done it not for glory or recognition, but for duty, for the quiet, often invisible mission of keeping the seas safe. This is the paradox of submarine life. It's one of the toughest, most demanding jobs in the world, yet most of what submariners do remains hidden from public view. There are no parades for successful patrols, no headlines for missions that end without incident. Their victories are measured in silence by the crises that never happened, the conflicts that never escalated, the dangers that never reached the surface. And in that silence, there's a kind of pride that runs deeper than words. Reflection comes naturally to submariners when they step back on land. Some realize how much they've taken for granted: the smell of rain, the sound of wind, the simple luxury of space. Others find that they've developed a new patience, a new appreciation for small comforts. Life inside a submarine changes you. It strips you down, forces you to confront the edges of your endurance, and then builds you back up with a resilience that never quite leaves. In the end, the resolution isn't just about the mission being completed. It's about what the sailors take with them when they return to the surface. They've lived through an experience that few could imagine, and in doing so, they've become part of a brotherhood and sisterhood that spans generations. Every submariner who walks off that boat knows that they belong to a tradition of silent service, one that continues beneath the waves long after they've returned home. That reflection on sacrifice, endurance, and unseen service is what ties their story together. The submarine may dock, the crew may disperse, but the lessons of life beneath the ocean stay with them forever. Life inside a nuclear submarine, 1,000 feet below the surface, is unlike anything else on Earth. It's a world of steel and silence, of routines that demand precision, and of pressures, both physical and mental, that few outsiders could ever endure. For months at a time, sailors give up sunlight, space, and comfort, all to ensure that the unseen threats of the world are kept at bay. They live in constant closeness, balancing exhaustion with duty, carrying the weight of missions that will never make the news. And yet, when you talk to submariners, most don't describe their experience with bitterness. They don't dwell on the hardships or the claustrophobia. Instead, they talk about pride. They talk about the bonds forged in that floating steel world, about the trust they have in one another, about the sense of belonging to something larger than themselves. They know that their sacrifice keeps the seas open, deters conflicts, and protects millions who will never even realize what's happening beneath the waves. Maybe that's the lesson of submarine life. It's not about the discomfort or the isolation, but about the resilience and purpose that rise out of it. The ocean is vast, dark, and unforgiving, but inside that submarine is proof of human adaptability, teamwork, and strength. It's a reminder that even in the most extreme conditions, people can create order, trust, and even a sense of home. So the next time you see a submarine cutting across the horizon or hear about one quietly patrolling somewhere in the depths, remember the crew inside. Think about the men and women who've given up the sun and the stars so that the rest of us can live in peace without ever feeling the weight of what they endure. They don't ask for recognition, and most of their work will remain forever classified. But their silent service is one of the strongest shields we have in a fragile world. In the end, life inside a nuclear submarine isn't just about surviving in the deep. It's about proving every single day that human endurance and sacrifice can thrive even in the darkest corners of the earth. And while the world above continues with its noise and distractions, somewhere beneath the surface, a crew of sailors is keeping watch, quietly standing guard for all of us.